Greetings, veterans and friends. John Ott, your host here at Pennsylvania Veterans Forward. I'd like to welcome you to episode 6, which is all about the service officer. Today we speak with Mr. Tom Applebach, Director of Military and Veterans Affairs in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. He talks about the high value that an accredited service officer provides the veteran, especially in areas where they're filing claims for compensation against the VA or other services that county service officers provide or that the Veterans Administration may have available to eligible veterans. It's a fantastic show. He's very gracious with his time. There's a lot of information packed into a small interview. So without further ado, let's get right to the show. Pennsylvania Veterans Forward, Mr. Tom Applebach, who is the Director of Veterans Affairs for Lehigh County. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Glad to be here, and always a pleasure to talk about veterans benefits with my fellow veterans. So.
Absolutely, it's a great topic, and this is a topic that I've been wanting to do on the show for quite a long time. So I really appreciate you taking the time and helping the veterans. We have veterans who are watching the shows, veterans' families. We have non-veterans watching the shows, people who care for veterans. So really appreciate your time, and this is going to be one of the more informative ones that I think there's a lot of substance to this. So great to know you. Full disclosure here, Tom Applebach is also a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. He is the commander of VFW Post 9264 in Macungie, Pennsylvania. And he's been the commander down there for a few years. So very active in the veterans community. He's a cohort of mine in District 8 in the VFW. So great to have him here. So Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself and the background.
Just brief background. I spent 21 years in the military. I spent 12 years active duty in the Air Force as a weather forecaster or weather guesser, and then 9 years in the Army and Army Reserve. And I retired from the Army Reserve in 2006. Since then, I worked for some local government, private companies, and then I fell here as the Director of Veterans Affairs for Lehigh County almost 9 years ago. And to be quite frank about it, it is the best job I've ever had. Getting up for work in the morning is a pleasure.
Yeah, especially when you that's not many people can say that these days. So I really appreciate that. With work being tenuous and stressful across it's not many days you can say I'm charged to get up and help veterans. That's fantastic. Your position is a key, as are all the county directors in each of the counties, no matter where you are, just not in the state of Pennsylvania, but of course wherever you are in the United States or across the world. Service officers are a key job, a really key job, helping the veterans understand what they have coming to them as far as compensation.
Absolutely.
And as far as entitlements, things like that, and I'm sure we're gonna go into that. Tom, I'm interested particularly in your view, what you see the role of the service officer, whether you're a VFW service officer, and we'll talk about that, or a county service officer, or even as a post-service officer. Any of the VSOs, the veteran service organizations, have them. What do you see the role is in the importance?
Yeah, for myself and many service officers, we have to be accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs. We are not VA employees, but we're accredited by the VA with training and then expertise on assisting with entitled, benefits, compensation, pension, and some other VA program. And I'll be quite honest, it takes 2 to 3 years on the job to really be a good VSO, only because it's very complex. It takes a lot of time to sort of kind of been there, seen there, and done that. But our role essentially is we're the liaison between the claimant, and I say it that way because it could be a veteran, it could be a surviving spouse, it could be other family members, but we're the liaison between our veteran community, so to speak, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. And our role really is to, I don't want to say smooth the process, but to make sure that that the process of applying for whatever benefit is correct. There's some programs that require a fair amount of paperwork. The VA has a tendency sometimes to be a little bit, shall we say, opaque. So it's our job to help put those packages together, submit them to the VA on the claimant's behalf with pretty good, comfort that it's going to get approved or go through smoothly the first time. I hear too many people who say, well, we sent everything to the VA and now they're sending me letters. They want this and this and this. I don't understand this. And of course, we will assist them and we'll try to fix it. But our job really as liaison is to make it happen as best as we can the first time. But we're also an advocate for our veterans, and not just with the VA or state or county benefits, but our homeless veterans, our other cohorts out there how can we link in with the community to make sure our veterans are being served on that end. So it's an interesting role as a county director because, and my staff, of course, because on the one hand, we have an official capacity, but we also, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, every county director is a county employee. We don't work for the state. So we are able to aim or focus our office efforts on what we see are the needs in our community, which are a unique community. I'm in Lehigh County, but we look at it as Lehigh and Northampton County because Lehigh Valley.
Sure.
And I work very closely with the director at Northampton County. But we're an urban area somewhat, so we have those urban homeless issues or something that you may not be dealing with in Braddock, County or Brad because they're much more rural.
Sure.
The flexibility that we have is, again, we can focus on the issues that we see in our community affecting our veterans and tailor our efforts as best as we can. So it's I know I'm going on a whole lot there, but it's a very wide-ranging job. It's very holistic. And as I think that's why I said in the morning, I love getting up in the morning because I know I'm going to be able to delve into certain things that are very satisfying to me because I know I'm making a difference.
Yeah, and that's really important, right? Because a lot of veterans, you probably have had veterans or family members that have come to you and said, I just don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. Maybe I have filed a claim. Maybe I've tried it myself. I've gotten responses from there. And I have no knowledge base from which to now say, here's what I need to do, or if I'm doing the right thing, right? A lot of veterans I talk to, maybe you've talked to some and say, I don't want to send the wrong thing, or I don't want to say the right, the wrong thing to the VA, or I don't want to send the wrong thing to, the wrong response. And out of fear, sometimes claims don't get processed, right? Or this and that. But what if you would, kind of, since there's a lot of, as I said, veterans and veterans families watching this, non-veterans as well, could you give us a high level overview of what that claims process is?
Well, and there's two really big programs that the VA has, and one is the compensation claims, and the other is the pension program, and we'll talk about that a little bit later if you'd like.
Sure.
But the compensation program is a monetary program, and it is aimed for our veterans who have service-connected injury, illness, or an ailment that is chronic and persistent. And the Department of Veterans Affairs can provide monetary compensation for those issues. I say chronic because you're not going to get compensation because you had a head cold, but you could get it for an injury that was incurred. And of course, this gets very complex. So when you say high level, we'll keep it at that. But we have our presumptive illnesses for exposure to Agent Orange. We have the Camp Lejeune exposure to contaminated water. And now, of course, with the Pact Act, the huge expansion of our Gulf War veteran and exposure to particulate matter, burn pits, and so forth. And those specific illnesses associated with that. But the claims process, as complex as it could be, is fairly straightforward. The VA looks at one thing, first of all, does the person have what I'm going to say qualifying active duty service or a line of duty incident if they were Guard or Reserve? But do they have qualifying service? Do they have an injury, an ailment or something? And is there a nexus between them? And that's the real key. So sometimes it's really straightforward. We have a veteran who's served in Vietnam, boots on the ground, or now they've expanded to Cambodia, Thailand, and so forth, which is wonderful. And they have an illness that is presumed to be exposure to Agent Orange. And as long as there's proof, either the veteran provides or the VA can find it, they're required to go look for it, that the veteran served boots on the ground in Vietnam, it's a no-brainer, okay? It's a very straightforward process. Other times it becomes much, much more complex, and that's really where a good, experienced, qualified VSO comes into play, because we have the experience of how can we get that evidence, how can we put that package together that when we submit it to the VA, and hopefully submit it under what they call the FDC program, that stands for a fully developed claim, which means all the paperwork, everything they need is there, and they can review it, process it, and approve it within their 125-day guideline, which is what they try to meet, without having to go get a lot of different, additional evidence. And in some cases, things do get delayed because we have to find evidence, or they have to. But the high-level overview is the VSO is really the place to go. And whether that's your county office, another service organization, you want to connect with a VSO that has experience and you're comfortable with. For what it's worth, compensation, again, it's a tax-free benefit. The VA rates disabilities on a percentage scale, and then there's a sliding scale. You can find all of that, how much you could potentially get, and so on the VA website. But don't look at the dollars. Let's get the disability ratings first. Then we'll worry about that on the back end. And I will say, because it kind of hurts me a little bit when I hear this, but I hear a veteran will call me and say, "Hey, I served in Vietnam in 1966, and I didn't want to take any money away from other veterans." Yeah. Please don't use that mindset. If you have a disability that was service incurred, I hate to say you earned that benefit, but that you have entitlement to that benefit. You served our country. So please don't hesitate. You think you're taking away something from some other veteran. The federal government will print more money. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it'll all work. And I'll throw in one last thing, and I don't want to go on and on too much about claims, but if you have an illness or an injury, or especially an illness or a disease that you think might be service connected, give us a call, because, for example, the Agent Orange presumptive illness list, last year they added hypothyroidism. They just added hypertension. So in my office, we won't file a claim that we know is a frivolous claim, but we will file claims for things that are not on a presumptive list because we want to establish that record. The VA is required, if it gets added to the list under what's called the NEMA rule, to go back and pull those old claims and adjudicate them. So don't think just because it's not on the list, I can't file the claim. Talk to a VSO, and we'll file it if we think there's a good reason to file it. We know it's going to get denied, but we've established the record, and that's very, very important, not just for the veteran, but potential surviving spouse benefits. Yeah, that's a great. So think about your future. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, veterans will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, I need a service officer," but they'll say, I don't know if my particular illness or ailment or whatever it is qualifies for VA assisted. And they'll say, I have commercial insurance. I really haven't had, I haven't had a need to use the VA. Or they'll say, I don't know if I'm service connected, or maybe I'm not service connected, right? And to your point, file those claims, get those records. They may not be there now, but they may be there in some point in the future. The biggest question I get, Tom, maybe you can help clarify this, is, the veterans are like, do I need to go down and take a physical? What do I tell them? What do I not tell them? Is it required to take a physical, or do I just need to provide the paperwork and fill out the forms and let the VA then do the investigation? The answer to that is it depends. How's that for a solid answer? And I think the easiest answer to that is talk to the service officer, because we can guide you as to what sort of medical evidence that we need if it's available. The VA, for example, if you're not being treated by the VA, but you're seeing a private physician for a disability, the VA has about 70 now. They're called disability benefits questionnaires, and they're specific to either body parts, if you will, or illnesses or so forth. For example, there's one that's specific to diabetes type 2, which is a presumed exposure to Agent Orange. And you can have your private physician complete that form, It's only a couple of pages long. And in lieu of sending in a bunch of medical mumbo jumbo records that the VA has to paw through, those disability benefits questionnaires tell them everything they need to know, and they can rate it that much faster. So before you, and if you're being treated by the VA, we don't need the medical records, because the Veterans Benefits Administration, which is who handles the compensation claim, we simply tell them you're being treated by the VA Healthcare Administration, and they'll pull those records into their system. So don't go to the VA and pull all your medical records. Don't go to your doctor and get every medical record. Talk to the VSO, and we'll guide you as to what we need to simplify the process. When I file a claim, I always want to put myself in the seat of the VA reviewer. And if I can make his job or her job that much easier, then we know that claim is going to go through that much faster.
Yeah.
And that's the objective: get it through the first time quickly, smoothly, painlessly, and get money out the door, into the veteran's pocket.
Yeah, that's another key area, right? Some of the more popular questions I get. What typically, when you see a veteran's filing claims for compensation, what do you typically see as ailments? Do you see the ones like we're missing limbs and things like that? Those may be a little bit more obvious, and maybe they're already receiving claims. But what are the ones that are, a little bit more hidden or not so obvious, where you would encourage veterans to say, hey, you know what, these types of claims or these types of ailments or illnesses are actually worth filing a claim with the VA to have them adjudicated?
That's really a great question. A simple example is, say, for example, while you were in the military, you injured your knee. You hurt your knee. You were PT, or you fell off a truck or whatever, and you hurt your left knee. If hopefully you had some medical treatment for it, because then it's in your records, and then the VA can say, yes, you hurt your knee. That's that nexus we're talking about. But the one thing, you may be service connected for that knee injury, and now your hip is hurting because your gait has changed.
Got it.
Well, that hip could be considered a secondary disability, and the VA will evaluate that. So we have a lot of times we have people with secondaries where they don't think about, I do have something, A plus B equals C. They've kind of gone down the road. That's a very interesting question. I hate to say this, but for most veterans who have very traumatic injuries, loss of limb or something, especially if it occurred, in the military, yes, they better damn well be receiving compensation already in VA healthcare. So I'm not going to say there's necessarily those hidden injuries or something, but the biggest issue again is think about what happened to me while I was in the military. While I was in the military, is it documented, or can I somehow prove it occurred to me? And sometimes it's not just the injuries. A very fast example, but I had a veteran come to me maybe about a year ago, and they were in the Air Force, and they had been, I believe, in Korea, but spent many temporary duties in Vietnam, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks working on an aircraft or whatever, and then in and out. And then, of course, they didn't have anything in their personnel files specifically transferring them to Vietnam, and TDY orders that just didn't happen. And we came upon an official document, shall we say, that had the APO, SF, and a zip code.
Oh.
And when I went and searched that zip code, I found that it was a APO in Vietnam, and sent that to the VA. And they actually had the records. They just hadn't dug that deep. I sent it to the VA, pointed that out, and they said, yes, obviously he had boots on the ground, and the claim went through.
Wow.
So I know we're talking about injuries, but also sometimes it's just that proof. And I'm not trying to say I'm the greatest VSO in the world, because trust me, the Google machine is a huge help when it comes to this.
Absolutely. Use all of your tools.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm giving the right answer.
Sure.
But more than anything, that's where a good VSO can do a little bit of digging. The guy swore up and down he was in Vietnam, but we just couldn't find anything. And then it, clicked in my little, dinosaur brain back here. And I went, wait a minute. APOs tell you, where you were at. So, the zip code. So we put 2 and 2 together on that, and it all worked out.
That's great.
But I'm not going to say that I see any specific injuries one over another. obviously military service varies considerably.
Right.
It's really a matter of putting the pieces of the puzzle together that can get a claim through. As I tell a lot of our claimants, especially if they've worked on something with the VA and it's going sideways, is let's figure out where we are. And that way we can figure out where we're going.
Yeah.
And a good VSO is going to try to put together those puzzle pieces and figure out the roadmap
right.
to success.
And you know what I figured out is that it really is just a process. It's almost like a legal process in adjudications, right?
In some respects it is, yes, absolutely.
And knowing that process, knowing what they're going to look for, having an advocate. I mean, you're a veterans advocate, and I would consider any service officer at any level a veterans advocate, right? Doing this job. The question, probably the second or third most question is, after I file a claim, what kind of time frame am I looking at? And I know that's going to depend. That's right. You might get the same question, right? When can right? Here's my bank account number. Here's the let's get the direct deposit going.
Where's my money?
Where's chop, right? Chop. So general timeframes, it's probably like you said, it depends, right? Everything is unique. How much evidence is presented? How much evidence?
Yeah, it's the VA has set themselves. Actually, Congress has told the VA we want all claims, no matter what type of claim, we want it finished in 125 days.
Oh wow!
So that's their goal, to hit their suspense. But that's just an arbitrary clock, if you will. It all depends on, for example, if we have a veteran who's wants to file a claim, has no VA medical records or private medical records, the VA is going to schedule them for what they call a comp and pen examination for that disability or those claimed disability. And that can stretch the clock out a little bit. Now, the VA does, the contractors that work for the VA and the comp and pen system, they're under the gun to get things moving. But of course, that can slow things down. That's probably the biggest thing that elongates that. And when we have some, for example, our Blue Water Navy veterans, their ship has to have been within 12 nautical miles of the coastline of Vietnam. And the VA has to they actually have a special section that reviews all that and everything. But that, of course, can slow it down. And I do know that that section swamped, for lack of a better term. They have a lot of claims that they're trying to work. So that can slow the process down. The good news is when a claim is filed and hits the VA, and in my office, we file claims electronically directly into the system. We literally can push a button and 2 minutes later, we can go into the VA system and see the claim already there. It's no paper, no mailing of stuff, no, we didn't get it, we lost it, none of that stuff. I forget where I was going with all this now.
Time frames.
What was I talking about?
Time frames.
Time frames. It's Friday.
Amen.
Right.
Time frames. Yes.
It's Friday afternoon.
It is.
The other thing, but claims move. I hate to say it I like to say it, the speed of the bureaucracy. But that's one of the things when we file a claim, if we can do it as a fully developed claim, and there's no hiccups that we missed or some issue, they move through pretty quickly. That's what I was going to say. The good thing is the moment that the VA receives the claim officially into their system, that's the date of the claim. So whether it takes them 2 weeks or 8 months, they're going to pay back to that date of claim of an accrued benefit. So the VA is not trying to lengthen it out because they don't want to give you money. They're going to pay you back to that date of claim. Right. So don't think that you're, now that being said, John, if I file a claim and a veteran calls, now I try to monitor all my claims in the system once or twice a week when I'm in there. But if a veteran calls me and says, hey, it's been a year and I haven't heard anything, something's gone horribly awry. Okay. Something has gone completely sideways. But hopefully I see issues in the system and I can get them addressed. I see letters in the system going to the veteran the day the letter was issued. I address the issue and upload to the system 3 weeks before the veteran even sees the letter.
Oh, that's great.
And a good VSO should be.
Yeah, and people say that's that's the time that they're looking at the time. Do I have to send evidence? What else do I have to provide? Do I have to, like I said, I get a lot of questions from veterans that say, do we have to go in and actually do a physical? or is everything adjudicated by the evidence, the paper evidence that you have? That's a big one that I get as well.
Right. Well, and I guess maybe an answer to that is, in some respects, when the VA adjudicates a disability, let's say that they you send in a diagnosis from your doctor that you have a lumbar issue, and it's just a diagnosis. Well, the VA can say, yes, that's service connected, but we need to know how disabling this is so that they can rate it on their 0 to 100% scale. So that's why they may send you for a comp and pen. Could be simply for the diagnosis, but they also need to know how disabling is this disability.
Got it.
So that's where if you're seeing a doctor, those disability benefits questionnaires, why would you want to go see an exam set up by the VA when you can see your own doctor who already knows you, probably has it in his records, and can simply fill out the form and we rock and roll.
Yeah, and I appreciate kind of the clarification on that. There's another area that just seems to be, and maybe because I don't understand it, but other veterans that will approach me and say, you know what, this whole rating system, I don't get it. Some veterans will say, I have a friend that's 120% disabled, right?
Sure.
Versus, 70% this and that. And they're saying, well, am I getting 120% of the max? And I'm told that disability rating system is it's probably an easier time trying to figure out world peace than it is the VA disability rating system.
Yeah, we call it VA math, but there is a. This is not the time and place to explain it, but there is a method to the madness of how rating. How somebody is at 70% and somebody else is at 90%, and then somebody, of course, is rated at 100% permanently and totally disabled. But there is some method to the madness of how those numbers are calculated. I would say to any veteran watching now, if they have a rating. And they have questions about how did this number, how did they achieve this overall number, or how do I increase my rating? Talk to a VSO who can explain the math, and also more importantly, explain the process for applying for an increase for a disability or multiple disabilities, and can explain, which is all public on the internet, but can explain the VA schedule of ratings and the criteria for the higher each rating. Disabilities don't always go 0, 10, 20, 30, etc. They may go, 0, because 0% means that it is service connected, but Bryce, it's not disabled.
Got it. Okay?
But don't panic on a 0%, because if that condition worsens, then we can apply it. Ask the VA to take another look and increase it to, the next level, which could be 20%, 50, 70, 100. They're not all just simply 10, 20, 30, as I said. But on the VA website you can Google this, the VA schedule of ratings, and you can go in and you can see how they rate a specific disability and how the criteria to go to the next level. It might be 50, you might be rated 50%. I want an increase. Well, does the disability rise to the level of a 70% or 100%? And, do we have the medical to prove that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. You actually kind of dovetailed into the question I was going to ask, is that I once was engaged with VSO in a conversation about ratings, and they said, the 0% disability rating is important, and you just clarified it. Said, that's important because they will then service connected, and then of course, if it does worsen, then you can apply for an increase in that sense. So
yeah, and all ratings kind of do have two parts, and the first one is it service connected, and then how disabling is it? So that service connection is huge. You asked about disabilities and so forth, and common ones. You service connected for knee injury. Well, here we are 30 years later, and there's arthritis in the knee. So we're already service connected. So all we got to do is prove that there's arthritis in the knee, and the doctor says, yeah, it's most likely due to that injury, and the VA will rate it accordingly. So service connection is, even 0% is absolutely huge, because it's at least got that locked in.
And we talk about disability ratings in connection to disabilities or connection to service connected. I get a lot of questions from veterans that say, well, wow, if I have a service connected disability, let's say a Vietnam veteran, right? Said this is a byproduct of me being in Vietnam. That service connected rating is I'm going to get back pay all the way back to Vietnam. And I think there's an intent to file, or the actual time you file versus actually going back and getting back pay from the time you were injured. There seems to be a lot of confusion around that. How would you explain that, or kind of clarify that up?
Yeah, I mean, it would be certainly nice if you could go back in time and say, you owe me, from 40 years ago or something. That'd be, wow, that'd be some money. But unfortunately, that's not the case, except for one case that I had that was huge, but we'll talk about that another time.
Sure.
But in a nutshell, the claim in this, everything arises out of what's called Title 38, United States Code, and 38 CFR Code of Federal Regulations. If you're bored one night, you can go pull them up on the internet. But those are the regulations. The code is what Congress has promulgated, and the regulations are what the VA has promulgated in response to that statute. But in a nutshell, a claim does not arise until a claim is made in many, many, many cases. So if you were injured, and we'll take injuries and diseases differently, because if you were injured 30 years ago while you were on active duty and you file a claim today is your date of claim. It is what it is. Now, the same thing with illnesses. If you were boots on the ground in Vietnam and you're diagnosed today with a presumed illness, let's say, for example, prostate cancer, today is your day of presumed, the date of the claim. In some cases, the VA can go back 1 year in time, and it varies on different factors, shall we say. But it's very, very, very rare that the VA, from an initial claim, will go back in time. The case I spoke about was a claim that had been filed many years ago and constantly denied. And we're still 5 years later in the process of fighting with the VA to go back in time, back to 1973, as a matter of fact, on some other issues. And it looks like we're going to end up, the attorney, pro bono veterans attorney, I'm not that smart. We're going to end up with appeals for veterans claim on that one. But we've so far gotten the veteran almost $1 million.
Oh, my goodness. That is,
which is great. Yeah. The bad news is that's money he should have been getting for years. So it's kind of a lump sum payment, if you will.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the VA regulations say they can't go back in time from an initial claim.
Wow. Well,
that's the short answer.
Yeah, right. Because again, people come and say, wow, I've got all this, I've got $750,000. I've got $1 million coming back from 1966 or 67.
And that brings me back to that point of those veterans who say, well, I didn't want to take money away from other veterans. No. If you think you have a claim, file get with the VSO, get the claim filed, because the VA is not going to go back. When you can't go to the VA and say, well, I was going to do this 10 years ago. The VA is going to say, cool story, dude, but here we are today.
Right,
so.
Right, exactly. There's another subject too that, of course, you had mentioned earlier in the broadcast is an overview of the veterans pension process, different from the claims process.
Yeah, the pension. And don't think of this as like a pension from an employer or something. They just call it a pension. It's a program that a lot of veterans, unfortunately, are not aware of, because most veterans are thinking compensation only. But it's a program that is available to veterans and their surviving spouses. Okay, and there's two different things. But long story short, the pension program is aimed. The number one qualifier is that a veteran served during a period of war. Now, they don't have to have served in combat or deployed, but they had to have served during World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and now the Gulf War. If they served only during peacetime, they're just not eligible. It's just the way Congress set it up. But they had to have served during a period of war. It's aimed at lower income veterans, and it can help supplement income. There's kind of two parts to the program. The first one is the VA pension. Now, most veterans, especially if they are retired or their surviving spouse or a veteran with a spouse, are receiving Social Security. The maximum income in this program, the pension program, kind of closely mirrors Social Security. So most veterans are not eligible, or they don't qualify, I should say, for the pension program. But there's another element to it, and don't discount yourself from the pension program without talking to a VSO. There's another element to it that's called the pension with aid and attendance. And that is for veterans or surviving spouses who need assistance with daily activities from another person, or what are called activities of daily living. You might hear it as ADLs. Those are such things as assistance with bathing, with dressing, with toileting, with prosthetic management, with transferring, which is where you need assistance getting from the bed to the chair, or from the chair into your bed. Those can be qualifying what are called unreimbursed medical expenses. Other unreimbursed medical expenses are your payments to Medicare Part B and C and D, if you have that. Other supplemental health insurance, prescription copays, and there's some other small kind of what we call kind of nickel and dime things, but when you add them up, can make a big difference. But at its root, without getting deep into details, a person can be receiving assistance from an in-home care provider. They hire a company. The VA doesn't provide the provider. They provide additional money to help pay for those providers.
Gotcha.
So they can be contracted to an in-home care provider, an adult daycare, or they're living in an assisted living facility or like facility that's providing those activities of daily living. And we can subtract those costs. So to use kind of simple math here, if you will, and again, the benefit, if the veteran has passed, the benefit transfers to the surviving spouse. So it's a great benefit. They do not have to be married while the veteran was in the military. They just have to be married for more than 1 year.
Okay.
Simply the rule. Legally married, of course. And I say that only because Pennsylvania is not a common law state. Now, we've been able to convince the VA that they are married because they've lived as husband and wife or spouses for 25 years and some other things. But this common law doesn't fly simply in Pennsylvania. But all that said, very simple math. Let's say we have a surviving spouse. The spouse is living in an assisted living facility and receiving activities of daily living, and her doctor says she needs these and so forth. Her income, for example, Social Security, retirement, whatever, we add that income up. Let's just say, and I'm making up numbers, of course, is $35,000. Her assets, because the VA looks at how much money is in the bank and so forth, because they want you to spend those assets, that cash availability down until you qualify. It makes sense. Yeah. The federal government's not going to give you money. You need the money. But your assets are qualifying. Your income, again, $35,000 a year. But you're living in a facility that costs $45,000 a year, which is probably pretty low, actually.
Sure. Yeah, especially.
Well, you don't have enough yet. Yeah, you don't have enough money coming in. You got income is here and the expense is here, and your assets are, $15,000 in a savings account that you're rapidly spending to stay there. The VA crunches the numbers, and they can provide a monthly supplemental income for a surviving spouse. It's a little bit over $1,300 a month maximum. But when you take a monthly income plus that new VA money, that can make all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
The same applies for a veteran. Numbers are a little bit different. Same applies for a veteran. Same applies for the veteran with a spouse. It's a great program. And again, it can make a huge difference between someone having a good quality of life,
yeah,
and being able to pay the bill and not. It's an earned benefit. And unfortunately, we get some phone calls sometimes from, a daughter that says, my mom's been in an assisted living facility for 2 years. We're broke, and we just heard about this program. And it makes you go, oh, because again, the VA is not going to go back in time. Fortunately, here in the Lehigh Valley, our in-home care providers and our facilities are well aware of the program. They'll ask the key question to the veteran or the spouse: did you serve in the armed forces? Not, are you a veteran? That's the wrong question. Did you or your husband or wife serve in the armed forces? Yes, they did. Do you know when they served? My husband was in Korea. Here's the phone number to the county office. Call them. We'll take it from there. But our facilities are very knowledgeable. And at the end of the day, it benefits them, because if we can get the benefit for the claimant, then there's money that can pay the bill for the facility. So it makes sense that they would advocate.
Well, that's fantastic.
But it's a program that it's people don't know about, but please be aware.
Yeah, I had no idea that was.
Pass the info on.
I had no idea that was actually transferable to the surviving spouses, which is absolutely incredible. That's why
it's a great program.
These informational sessions are just invaluable, like that, to let veterans know what they have, what they're entitled to, and they have coming, right? Because as you said, they could be incurring costs that are just absolutely debilitating and life changing, and the additional burden on the families, right? It's incredible.
And I'll throw in very quickly on the pension program. The application process or the documentation is fairly complex. Please don't try to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Contact your county office and say, can you help me with this? We put in packages, and we've had the VA approve them within 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
But we know all the documents that we need to send that the VA needs to see. And again, it's kind of an opaque process if you don't know. I always use it akin to when it comes to like filing your income taxes. When you're single, you can do them on your own. If you own a small business, your accountant, we're kind of your accountant, if you will.
Right.
Because
speaking of doing things on your own, I know I recently heard your recent talk at a VFW event we had up in Macungie in your area. Real quickly, the Pact Act now has been passed, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you've done extensive research, probably in all your spare time, right, on the Pact Act. We have a number of veterans too that say, should I file a claim with this attorney that's going to that says we'll absolutely get you, money that you've had, money that you've had, like for for Camp Lejeune, right? For instance, for the camp, the contamination at Camp Lejeune, or what? I was part of I was in a combat theater of operations. I was exposed to burn pits. Should I use a VSO, a service officer, or should I use one of these high power attorneys that are just promising the world to them, and kind of the differences between the two, and of course the danger?
Well, there's a few things. We'll talk about like the particulate matter exposure, and so I can't tell you not to go to an attorney. You can file a claim on your own. You can go to an attorney, accredited VSO, whichever way you want to go. Many regular attorneys, when it comes to a disability claim, will not help, because the VA puts severe limits on what they can charge for their assistance at an initial claim. That's where our services come in. Of course, we don't charge. Right. We can't charge for our services. So it's all free. I mean, obviously the taxpayers are paying.
I think of it as buyer beware, right? Buyer beware.
Yeah, you're going to get a bill.
Right, exactly.
Now, when it comes to the Camp Lejeune, which is really, that's not really in the Pact Act per se, but the Camp Lejeune, I know we've seen all the commercials that are coming out and so forth. I can't tell someone to call those attorneys, or actually they're people who are just building a client list. They're not the actual attorneys who are going to be handling it generally. I can't tell you not to. I can't tell you to. What I can say is, if you contact them, some of the advice that's being put out is, don't get under the high pressure tactics to sign documents. If anything, if you're uncomfortable, talk to your attorney about the documents. John said a little bit there is buyer beware. Know what you're signing and what rights you're giving away. These firms, it's a class action suit, and they're going to get a portion of any money that they win. I understand, they need to earn money, make money. It's their living. But just be very, very aware and careful of what you're signing, and make sure you don't sign over that they can look at medical records unless you know what's going on. HIPAA protects those records, but once you sign it, they can see medical records. You've lost control. Yeah. So just be very, very, very careful. again, myself, I can't say don't call them or absolutely get on board with them. Just be very, very careful about what you're signing. Conversation with them may be harmless. Once you sign, legal documents, it may be a different thing. You are not, just be really careful. I'll leave it at that.
Exactly. And we talked, I heard you talk a little bit about the Pact Act as well recently. And since that legislation, it's if you had to boil it down into a 30-second, this is why the Pact Act is important, especially if you've been in a combat theater of operations, especially if you've been exposed to particulate matter. Getting this in front of a service officer or talking to a service officer is absolutely essential to veterans that may have been exposed to.
Absolutely. The Pact Act, they added areas of operation for Vietnam. They added huge things for particulate matter. There's a lot in there, and it's huge. Probably more than anything, I would say, if a veteran has previously filed a claim that was denied because it wasn't presumed or they weren't in the proper AO or whatever the case may be, talk to a service officer or the service officer that you use about that claim. Unofficially, please don't file a new claim. The VA, as I talked about earlier, they have to go back and reopen those claims. So don't bog down the system. But it's a good idea to contact your service officer. They can access into your VA file and they can see what happened and what's going on now. So we know what's happening. It's going to take the VA a while to get, backtrack on a lot of those claims. So patience is the watchword here, but it's also helpful to have a little bit of knowledge of things are good. I'll add one more thing, and I think I'm under my 30 seconds here, John, but you know me.
That's okay. This is great information, Tom.
If you filed a claim for a condition and it was denied, but that condition has worsened since you filed that claim, definitely talk to a service officer because that could be a supplemental claim. We want to ensure that the VA, when they do adjudicate it, is looking at the most up-to-date medical information that they can have. So I think the takeaway is call your service officer. If you don't have one, find a service officer and make contact with them. If I could, John, real fast, I know we're coming up on time here. I want to talk about just a couple other real quick programs that are out there.
Sure.
The first one is what's called the VA Caregiver Program. That comes through the Veterans Health Administration, but that can provide, if you are a caregiver, a spouse of a veteran who requires care and may not qualify for the VA pension program because you don't have you earn too much or you don't have enough deductions or the veteran has peacetime service, you could qualify for the caregiver program. That provides some additional money based on the idea that the caregiver has given up some employment income to stay home with the veteran. So look into that. VA.gov, the VA's website, is chock full of great information. Always check with the VA website. Please don't go to them down the rabbit hole of some other websites. Yeah. I joked earlier that the Google machine is my friend because I'm checking things on the VA website while I'm on the phone with you. But check into that caregiver program if you think you qualify. Yeah. But I also want to talk very, very quickly about some state programs. Probably the two biggest programs, and there are more out there. Some people can go to the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, DMVA, to look at other programs, information on state veterans homes and things like that. But the one program is what's called VTA. It stands for Veterans Temporary Assistance. We can get money through that program to help assist a veteran kind of over the hump or a surviving spouse over a financial hump. A good example, John, making up a story about you. Of course, you were in the hospital for 2 weeks, no fault of your own. You had surgery, you were in the hospital for 2 weeks, and you didn't earn a paycheck that time. And now you don't have enough money to pay your rent. We might be able to get you some funding to help cover that cost.
Did not know that existed.
So it's a little bit of a break. But, contact your county veteran service officer to talk about it. It's not a maximum we can get is $1,600, but that can help pay the rent. That can help pay the electric bill. Generally, the requirements are, honorable service and so forth, but it has to be an unexpected loss of income or an unexpected increase in expenses through no fault of the veteran. So if John was in the hospital and couldn't work, that was not his fault, and it was a loss of income. If John punched his boss in the nose at work and got fired, that's kind of on you, John.
Right. Or maybe another event like
you,
you're doing something that was maybe perhaps dangerous, or I would assume that criminal.
Yeah, if you got fired, yeah. And we've also been able to get money for a surviving spouse. The veteran recently passed away. The Social Security bump hasn't kicked in yet, and they can't pay the electric bill.
Wow.
That's an unexpected loss of income. And boom, we've been able to get them money. So don't think it has to be some event like employment and so forth. As I talked about, it could be, a life-changing event, so to speak. But we're here to, the program's there to help you over the hump. Contact your county if you think you may qualify. The second one I just want to talk about, a lot of veterans are aware of this, but Pennsylvania has a program called the Real Estate Tax Exemption Program. It is for you must have served during a period of war. It is for veterans who are rated 100% disabled, permanent and total by the VA. If that's the case, you could be entitled to be exempt from your school taxes, the big one, taxes, county taxes, and local taxes. It is income-based. The veteran, and they only look at the veteran's income or the surviving spouse's income because it's one of those benefits that passes. The income cannot exceed round numbers, $95,000 a year. That does include VA compensation, however. They look at that as income. But it's a great program, especially for our veterans who, they get their VA comp and Social Security. They're living on the edge a little bit,
sure.
As it may be. And if we can eliminate those property taxes, depending on where you live, $4,000 to $14,000 a year or whatever, so be it. But it's a great program. If you're not sure if you're permanent and total, you can contact your VSO. But every year the VA sends out a letter. It's usually in March. This year's was dated March 10th, I believe. And it's a quick rundown of what your rating is. And there's a statement on there. If you're 100%, there's a statement that says, are you considered permanent and total? And it says yes. Again, there's an income qualification. There's an home ownership qualification, but it's pretty straightforward. If you think you may qualify, call your county office.
Well, that's fantastic.
It has to be processed.
Yeah, and thank you for clearing that up, because I did have a veteran recently ask me, one, I wasn't am I eligible for a real estate tax waiver, but he hadn't been, unfortunately, he hadn't been a combat or served in a combat area, so he wasn't. But I didn't know that.
Well, it doesn't have to be combat area; it just has to be during that era.
Oh,
so
great,
you could serve during the Vietnam era, but you never went to Vietnam. And the idea, the thought process is just you may not have gone to Vietnam. You were stationed in Germany for 2 years, but at any moment. And for those who served in the military, at any moment, the Army could have voluntold you to go to Vietnam. So just because you didn't get the pleasure of dancing in, the Iraqi desert, doesn't mean that at any given moment, the military would have said, hey, by the way.
Surprise. Well, Tom, this is...
So it's not a matter of being in a combat zone. It's a matter of that wartime service.
Got it.
And if you're not sure, if you served during a period of war, of course, it's on the VA website, or call your county and we'll clarify for you.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic, Tom. I can't tell you how much information that you've come up with here and just kind of.
I have buried you with it.
But it's, what, it cleared it up in my small mind. It cleared it up for me. So I'm sure that people that have the big brain capacity, this should be crystal clear. But thank you for breaking it down. Thank you for making it simple and easy to comprehend and understand, of course, with everything. Tom, this has been great. We really appreciate your time. Tom Applebach, ladies and gentlemen, Lehigh County Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. He's an accredited service officer. He and all of his service officers there on his staff, willing to help veterans. They, as you heard him say earlier, gets up in the morning, and that's what really drives drives him to get up and work in the morning, that he's helped veterans. Tom, I can't thank you enough for your time. And maybe we got another episode coming coming up on disability ratings in the VA math, right? I think that would probably be an
That's 10 minutes on the math. So
awesome. Well, Tom, thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate we really appreciate all of this. And we'll see you on episode 7 of Pennsylvania Veterans Forward, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Tom Applebach.